Greetings and welcome to another LGR convention video thing. And yeah, as is sort of becoming a tradition at this point, there's a couple of them. So this video you're about to watch is going to be all about Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, the show itself. And then over on LGR Blurbs, there is a travel vlog more focused on the New York City, just kind of hanging out and getting there, and then also some show stuff. But yeah, it's a whole long thing. This is going to be all about the actual show. And Long Island Retro is something I've attended a couple times now, and it has fast become one of, if not my favorite, of these general retro conventions, I guess you could call them. Distinct from things like the Vintage Computer Festival in particular, right? So those are very computer focused, whereas Long Island is less focused, I guess you could say. It's just general retro stuff. There are a lot of vintage computers there, but it's also video game consoles and arcade stuff and pinball and tournaments and cosplay and just, you know, the whole retro hobby. And while I haven't recorded them, I've been to a lot of these type of shows and enjoyed them all to one degree or another. But this, like I said, is pretty much my favorite at this point. Mostly comes down to the venue itself, the Cradle of Aviation Museum. So you're doing all of these retro hobbyist things and gaming and whatnot, surrounded by historic aircraft and space vehicles and just all sorts of insanity. It's such a cool thing. Let's just dive right into it. And also, I do have to mention that they actually asked me and my brother to come out there and film this thing, and so they covered our travel costs getting there and back, as well as the hotel at the show. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's just start at the beginning of our trek, getting there, getting settled in. So this time around, my brother and I decided to forego flights entirely and take a dang train instead. Cause man, I've simply had far too many annoying experiences with Asheville Regional Airport and flights in general lately. So I was elated to learn there's an Amtrak route leading directly from my brother's area in Virginia right into the middle of New York City, where we wanted to spend some time hanging out before the show. And not only is it cheaper than flying, even for nicer business class seats, but the trek is only around 6 hours. I've spent twice that long in airports, frustratingly waiting for delays to get sorted out. Granted, I did have to drive another 6 hours just to get from my place to his, but still, it's more affordable, more reliable, and trains are neat. Need more trains. So after that delightful trip up, we found ourselves at Penn Station several days before the show itself, and checked into a hotel within walking distance, which, it's Manhattan. Everything is arguably in walking distance if you're willing and able to walk. And we were, so it was great. Lots more of this part of our trip is available for viewing in the travel vlog over on LGR Blurbs, so I won't dwell much on that in this video, but suffice it to say, big cities are kind of our jam, and we had entirely too much fun just curiously wandering around and enjoying the sights, sounds, and smells of the massive Malice. Certain smells anyway, it is what it is. But yeah, after days of wandering filled with pizza and bagels, we hopped another train on over to Long Island. Uniondale in particular, the home of the LI Retro Show itself and its main associated hotel, the Long Island Marriott Bonvoy. A solid hotel that I've enjoyed staying at twice now, except for the fact that it's not located anywhere walkable in relation to the convention. And well, that's because the show itself isn't held in a convention center, but the Cradle of Aviation Museum, about 1.5 miles away across a set of busy highways and streets with scattered disconnected sidewalks in between. So without our own car, we had to go the ride-sharing route in order to make it back and forth. That said, parking on site is pretty substantial, with 4 or 5 nearby lots to choose from, decorated with aircraft and statues and all kinds of nifty things. Though it does tend to fill up pretty quickly, on Saturday in particular, so I've noted that a lot of folks simply get dropped off even if they live nearby, so it's something to keep in mind. And once you're there, prepare for one heck of a line. There's only one way in and out for the public, and a rather small area for purchasing and picking up reserved badges once you're inside, though they do have a number of folks working up front getting visitors in as quickly as possible, and with my experience attending last year as a normal visitor, I was waiting only about 20 minutes in line before getting a badge. And from there, you're free to roam the show floor, with this initial area containing a slew of vendor booths, including the official merch and customer service table right across from badge pickup. Anyway, let's dive into Long Island Retro Gaming Expo 2024. A 3-day con running Friday through Sunday, and one that's been going since 2015. It started off as a one-day show in a single room before turning into a multi-day event in a few years and spreading in size to fill most of the local aerospace museum. And now that I've been a couple times, I wish I'd started visiting even sooner. My first time there was in 2023, where scheduling finally worked out and I was able to visit and explore on my own terms with no table or anything, and I was immediately blown away. I've attended a good number of these general retro conventions over the years, but LI Retro is really something special in its venue and exhibits. The vast majority of retro cons I've attended are held in gigantic convention center halls with cavernous 30-foot-tall exhibition rooms that look like a half-empty warehouse, and nothing against that at all. It's an efficient setup that's conducive to thousands of people crowding in without smelling too badly of overpriced hot dogs and nacho cheese farts. But Long Island is entirely different, being held within the Cradle of Aviation Museum, located on land that was once part of Mitchell Air Force Base and Roosevelt Field. As in Charles Lindbergh making the first successful transatlantic flight from New York to Paris in 1927, that Roosevelt Field. Over a century and a half of aviation history has happened around here, including dadgum Northrop Grumman just down the road, so that alone makes it notable. But then there's the museum itself, packed to the brim with some of the coolest aerospace bits and bobs around. It's well worth visiting on its own if you're even slightly into general aviation, military archives, and spaceflight, with plenty of aircraft, ground vehicles, weaponry, simulation rigs, drones, hands-on exhibits, and even an Apollo lunar lander module. And all these priceless artifacts act as a backdrop to Long Island Retro, a surreal sight that leads to some uniquely memorable moments. Being able to play shoot-'em-up arcade games right beneath an A-10 Thunderbolt is a wild experience, to say the least. Just you sitting there blasting digital guns and virtual enemies on screen, while in real life a 30mm Avenger autocannon is standing fully erect right above your head. Or how about browsing random Atari Jaguar cartridges, PS2 games, Nintendo plushies, and anime statues right beneath the shadow of an F-11 Tiger jet from the Blue Angels? Or maybe even collecting rare Pokemon previously only found at special events decades ago, right in front of the unused LM-13 module from Apollo 19. It's just simply not an experience you're going to get anywhere else, is what I'm trying to say. And the logistics alone are wild if you think about it, which we were able to catch a glimpse of on Thursday night during initial setup. Hundreds of consoles, arcade cabinets, CRTs, and computers being hurriedly hauled inside and assembled around historic aircraft is a sight to behold, especially being done so quickly. After all, it's a public museum open 6 days a week, so events like this have to be set up and taken down promptly in order to get the venue back to normal. I don't know, I just can't help taking a sec to appreciate the work and coordination that goes into setting up a show like this. And once it's all in place, starting at 4 p.m. Friday afternoon, visitors are provided a 14-page event guide, including write-ups of the main exhibits and a handy map of everything in the back. On paper, not just an app, thank goodness. Their app is nice too, but a proper physical booklet is where it's at. So let's fully explore this place, starting in that big sunlit room up front. It's the single most wide-open space at the show, providing a home to the majority of marketplace vendors, with even more scattered around elsewhere. And for folks that attend these types of events for the sales and collecting, this is the spot to be, with dozens of booths offering up practically anything retro, or retro adjacent really. Potential vendors are vetted for what they're selling, and so long as it's somewhat in theme with the show, then it's good to go. Obviously, the selection varies pretty wildly from year to year, along with what qualifies as retro, something I'm always amused to note whenever I attend these things. Like when I first started going to cons like this, it was rare to see much beyond the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube era, but in 2024, the selection of Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii has really taken hold at this show and others like it. A generation that still feels odd to consider retro, though some of that stuff is rapidly approaching 20 years old, so I get it. Even Wii U stuff is showing up more and more, which is nuts, but time marches on. Of course, it isn't all limited to games. There are plenty of homebrewed and independent small batch projects on offer, along with art pieces and decorative items, neat light-up displays, new and vintage toys, statues and minis, plushies, clothing, board games, custom consoles, and on and on. Super easy to spend hours perusing. It's also neat to see increasing types of physical media the last few years, like movies on VHS, Laserdisc, and DVD, along with music, not just on vinyl but CD, cassette tape, and even mini-disc. I often see younger folks now collecting this stuff too, even children. It gives me a big old grin anytime a kid with a handful of tapes and cartridges walks by, clearly excited by their haul of obsolete media, several of which I signed at my table. The tapes and CDs, not the kids. I will not sign your kids. I'm happy to sign most anything else though, including this French bread wrist rest, which I honestly forgot I covered years back on LGR. And yeah, this table is where I spent most of my time at the show this year. Signing stuff, selling stickers, taking selfies, and generally just hanging out and chatting with hundreds of folks who stop by. Alongside many others, Long Island Retro always invites plenty of special guests, including YouTube weirdos like me, game developers like Warren Davis, who made Q*bert and seems really into card tricks these days, and all kinds of folks from the wider retro scene both online and off. And not everyone had a table, but those of us that did were wrapped around this curved wall opposite the main front marketplace room. There are a few more retro vendors in here, but for the most part it's made up of guest tables, as well as a small concessions and cafeteria area with your basic selection of convention foods available for sale. Though really, outside the museum is where to go for a good lunch, with a multitude of food trucks hanging out ready to serve up everything from teriyaki bowls to pizza balls, much preferred over your standard convention wiener and pretzel fare if you ask me, and it's an excuse to get away from the elbow-to-elbow traffic for a bit. And while I didn't get footage of it, invited guests and panelists are also provided catered meals in a break room upstairs, which is not something most conventions of this size I've been to provide, so props for the meal options. It can be a true hassle to find food at other shows, and that only takes away from my time at the table doing the main thing I was brought there to do. On that note, lots of the guests were there to give presentations and speak on panels. And while I didn't appear in any myself this time, the fact that Panel Room 1 is a straight-up full-dome planetarium sure has me considering it for the future, especially if I could create a presentation making full use of the room's curvature and projectors, because, man, that'd just be fun. But yeah, all kinds of talks, performances, and gatherings happened in this first panel room, including cosplay shows and competitions at various points throughout the weekend. A particular shout out to American McGee's Alice. I don't know if her costume won, but she got my vote. And if panels aren't in the planetarium, they're over in Panel Room 2, which is more of a small classroom with a bunch of chairs crammed in, but hey, it does the job. And while I didn't get a chance to go in and listen myself, I at least had a good view of the room from the LGR table outside. And if arcades are more your thing, just turn the corner and walk down the hall from the marketplace and into this giant room on the far left of the building, where you're greeted with one of the most unique arcade setups I have ever seen. This is one of my favorite spots of the whole event, just an entire airplane hangar filled with free-play pinball machines and arcade cabs, right up against these magnificently presented aircraft. Arcade ambience and atmosphere is something I love in any environment, but a place like this is really something else. All that noise and activity echoing throughout the arcade hangar is energizing to the soul, I swear. Just take a listen. The electromechanical clunking of pinball tables, the raucous beats of dance and rhythm games, the constant zapping of virtual lasers, revving engines of racers, and friends beating each other up in competitive fighters on rows and rows of candy cabs. It all comes together into the best soundscape. And once again, the backdrop of all those planes is wild. It feels like a childhood dream come to life. And this is only the start. A bunch of what's in here is from the 90s and 2000s, so if you're looking for more classic fare with that dim arcade lighting, then they've got you covered. Towards the middle of the building and up one flight of stairs is the Arcade Age exhibit, starting just above the marketplace room and meandering down into a long hallway, extending all the way towards the other half of the show floor. Right here is where you'll find the majority of their selection of 1980s and 90s classics from Atari, Midway, Konami, Williams, Capcom, Taito, and more. Even some stuff from the 70s, like there's a glittery red computer space just chillin' right there soon as you walk in. The control buttons were unfortunately borked this year, but still, it's wild to see one of these out in the open for anyone to play like this. And all that purple magenta lighting is on point too. I just love it up here. But the only thing I'd add would be a little neon lighting and signage here and there, or perhaps a disco ball in the middle of the hallway for some added sparkly ambience. And once you make it to the other side, it turns into a more open walkway above the museum, with elevated views of all the visitors and exhibits down below to the left and right. Wonderful stuff, especially for photography and people watching. But yeah, let's head back to the other side real quick, because the console history setup is not something to be missed. Wrapping around the planetarium walls up here is a long set of tables filled up with playable examples of every notable video game console and handheld spanning generations. Starting at the very beginning with the Magnavox Odyssey and Pong, going through the 70s and into the 80s with Atari and Television, Coleco, Nintendo, and 8-bit Sega stuff, and through the 90s and into the 2000s with systems from Sony, Sega, Nintendo, Philips, 3DO, Atari, and on, with era-appropriate CRT TVs and controllers running standout game titles. It's an excellent way to revisit your childhood or introduce the younger crowd to a thorough history of gaming year by year. Another nifty thing up on this level is the Homebrew and Indie Game Showcase, right alongside a tool-assisted speedrun display, cause hey, why not? It all fits into the ever-evolving scope of a retro show like this, although it can be a bit hard to hear at times depending on when you're there, since just down from this is a spot where live music is played, like this group performing covers of classic game themes. It's awesome. It's just loud. Then if you take the staircases going up and above the vendor area, you'll reach the annual featured exhibit, celebrating something notable in gaming each year. This time the Sega Dreamcast 25th anniversary. Obviously there are all kinds of standout Dreamcast titles to play, but along with that are signs and write-ups going into historical context about what made the system special. This all clearly had some thought put into it, and I approve. Then back down below again, and off to the right-hand side of the building is just so much more. Long Island is densely packed, and we've seen a little over half of what's here. It's kinda easy to get lost and determine where to go when you first visit, since there are so many paths and corners, and each one is hiding something unusual if you take a closer look. The majority of consoles are actually spread all throughout these other halls and rooms, lining the walls and exhibits of the Air Museum and mingling with its existing displays. Thankfully, there's that map I mentioned earlier, along with signage signifying what's generally on each table. For instance, there's an entire area of anime and full-motion video games this year, along with a selection of console racers complete with racing wheel setups, a wall of music and rhythm games, a section of platformers, puzzle games, sports games, a whole spot for light gun shooters, and on and on. These wrap around all over the place, and every time I think I've seen everything, the next day I end up taking another corner and noticing something I had no idea was there. That said, something you'll absolutely be unable to miss is the PC free play area, simply due to the quantity of systems set up. This section's headed up by my friend Anatoly, aka DOS Nostalgia, and he puts his all into making sure everything is not only easy to run and play, but stays playable throughout the weekend. If you've ever dealt with anywhere close to this many beige boxes, you'll know that's no simple task. And again, seeing an entire section of a general retro show like this devoted to PCs is pretty uncommon. Outside of the different vintage computer festivals, this is simply not something I see at most shows. You'll definitely see a handful of DOS and Windows rigs elsewhere, but this is the only place I've ever seen with dedicated setups for playing things like Tyrion, Jazz Jackrabbit, the first Sims and Fallout games, Max Payne, Dangerous Dave, Monster Truck Madness, and the like. And of course, Duke 3D and Doom, that's a given. Not to mention an entire row of the best versions of the Oregon Trail, because you kinda have to. There are way too many people itching for a dose of dysentery in a place like this. So yeah, no surprise this is kind of my favorite part of the show, and that's exactly the kind of exhibit I'd love to set up myself. But I'm also so glad I don't have to, since I value my sanity. The computers don't stop there either, since just a ways down is this LAN party room, with Quake 3 being the go-to game here. A fine choice indeed, and any networking PC setup at an event is always appreciated. And if you're into more eclectic vintage computing options, 8, 16, and 32-bit machines from Japan, the UK, and Europe are also well represented, with a fantastic selection south of the main PC alcove. Amstrad, Amiga, Atari ST, X68000, PC-98, and even a complete Sega TerraDrive setup are all working and ready to play in this area. Not to mention these wild multi-cartridge retail displays and other showcase items that I've either never heard of or only read about online before. Oh, be sure not to miss this other room tucked away nearby, where you'll find even more computery goodness. Commodore 64s and Apple Macintoshes, and other mostly non-x86 things from the 80s and 90s. There are some true oddballs and funky choices in here, and again, outside of VCF, this is one of the few conventions I've attended where I've seen this many of these sorts of things playable to the public. I've also got to mention the Apollo Chamber, which this year is inhabited by the PokeLab. It's a new thing they're trying where the curator of this collection has set it all up, where you can use these custom kiosks to catch rare Game Boy, GBA, and DS Pokemon, monsters that previously were only acquired at special in-person events in the 90s and 2000s, apparently. Not my area of expertise, but it seems rad. And finally, we have got to look at the museum at the museum. The systems they have on display here are just wild. It's one of the most insane selections of rare consoles and generally unknown oddities I've ever seen at a show. Or even proper video game museums for that matter. Some of this stuff legit puts those to shame, with standouts like this incredible Sega Super Prologue, a karaoke system with a dadgum Sega Saturn built into it, and the JoySound Festa, a Wii U-based system meant for business clients that originally sold for like $10,000 in Japan. Plus things like the Panasonic WSX, the Sega Pluto, the TV Block, the Divers 2000, Saturn Inkjet printer, and geez, so many of these unobtainable devices around, and the fact you can go up to so many of them and enjoy all weekend is absurd, in the best way. And that about sums up Long Island Retro Gaming Expo in 2024. Absurd in the best way, I think describes it well. And I still didn't show everything, like the high score challenges and Mario Kart tournaments and whatever happens on Sunday since we had to fly back that day. There's always more, but you get the point. This is a lovely show that's run by friendly and knowledgeable staff, and I can't recommend it enough. Now, is it perfect? Of course not. The hotel could be closer, the halls are quite cramped, especially on Saturday, panel room number 2 is tiny, and any room not lit with sunlight is quite dim, with low lighting making it not only tricky to shoot footage, but hard to see many exhibits. That said, I can't imagine much improving without a change in venue, and the venue is half the reason this is such a unique show, one that is now my favorite of all the general retro-style cons I've attended to date. So thank you to Ryan Shapiro and the other showrunners for bringing my brother and I there and being so hospitable the entire time. As well as a huge thanks to all of you who came by the LGR table to say hi, purchase some cool crabs, and even drop off donations. It's all truly appreciated, and I am grateful for your kindness and support. And if you enjoyed this convention coverage, then feel free to check out my other videos on past shows, as well as the travel vlog companion piece for this video over on the LGR Blurbs channel. Or stick around for new videos always in the pipeline here on LGR. And as always, thank you very much for watching.